Dr. Michelle Veneziano is a doctor of osteopathic medicine. She's an osteopathic physician, adjunct clinical professor at Touro and Western Universities, and research faculty at the California Institute for Human Science. Her unique approach that she brings to the table as osteopathic self-care is rooted in the cranial, which is the head, osteopathy, a hands-on, evidence-based therapeutic practice that sources both the Western and Eastern philosophies to support the body's ability to heal itself. She shares practices and insights for awakening the doctor that resides within, healing thy physician, healing thyself, connecting with who we really are, and for living in alignment. And she's going to talk about the always path to embodiment. So I'm so glad you made it here. Thank you for coming and showing up for all of us. We're excited to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. I had one of those mornings and I went back and I remembered our conversation and I decided you had said, we're not on camera. So here I am. It's come as you are day.
No worries, no judgment.
Zero makeup. And also, this morning I woke up with a sinus thing, which happens when I'm in the Bay Area. There's a reason we have the sourest sourdough in the world. So anyway, I'm taking off for the desert soon. Thank you. Thank you. I was just looking and see if I know anybody here. And I know I'll know a ton more people who listen in on the replay.
That's right.
And I wonder from those present, because I'm working on this thing where does the world even know what an osteopath is? How many of you do? You could, if you can, I don't know.
Why in the chat if you know.
Something
Yes,
like,
if
yeah,
you
yeah. Great, great. I love the chat.
know what an osteopathic doctor is.
And I love that I got here and you were talking about healing in community. Somehow this is I don't know, revolutionary concept despite being the most basic thing, native to being tribal beings. And
that's right.
On that note, 2 years ago, I left my one-on-one clinical practice because I started doing groups just for myself, connection experiences like the one we're in right now. And I noticed we can actually move energy remotely, which of course is proven mathematically that time and space are relative and people can do distance healing on the other side of the planet so much faster.
Yeah.
And I get healed every time I do it. So for the first time in my life, this is a celebratory moment. What I'm doing in my service to the world, which is why I exist on this planet, is actually feeding me 100%. This is kind of an epic thing. And all of us out there supporting other people, I find, because I poll people, how much of what you are doing in the world is actually, generative for your own system. And that's, I think, the working edge that we're all, and I have my things like tech, all of what we're doing requires layers of things that I'm barely becoming expert at over time. So let me look in the chat. Any answers?
Nobody said yes. So I think you should go and describe your.
Okay. So I have my own definition. I have the standard definition is that we look at how all aspects of the body are interconnected and the bodies beings have inherent self-healing capabilities. And then you said cranial. We look at the structure of the cranium and the sacrum as the primary hinges, fulcrums around whether or not the body's actually able to resonate with the planet. We're all attuning to resetting ourselves, our states with the planet. And I was just reviewing Dr. Roland McCready talking about how when we're in coherence, which is represented by heart rate variability being in a certain range, that's when the healing happens. So today I want to talk about the very most basic things that somehow seem advanced these days, which is existing, retraining your system to default as in like an idle on an engine, because we're all biological engines, inside that range. And that we launch everything we do in the world and all the other healing and exercise that we do from that sturdy baseline. I just want to give a story to really I'm going to feel when we get this concept before I move on. So, Thich Nhat Hanh, he recently passed a year or so ago. His impact on the world was so huge. His passing sent this whole ripple through of gratitude for what he brought to the world in his teaching as a meditation master. And he described that as a young boy, he was learning from this master and he had some transcendental experience in his meditation practice. So he ran into the master's room and he banged the door and the master said, it's not just when you're on the cushion. If you want to actually live in what I would call an expanded state, which gives you access to so much synchronicity, deep healing, intuition, it's an always. So I named this talk, what did I name it? Let me look at my notes. It was great. I pondered it. I pondered the always path to embodiment. And I will reference flow states often because that's what I'm talking about. And I find that for a lot of us, it's like a great idea, but what does it feel like in your tissues to live in flow? And what is the evidence that you're doing it? And I also wrote here, living at the speed of your body. So how does this relate to osteopathy? I'm going to tie it back in. What I mean is, in that moment when I put my attention on that concept, I actually went inside. You notice my voice got a little softer, and I'm actually feeling my voice reverberate in my tissues. And so I'm talking about, we're all born, by the way, this way, and then we acculturate and our nervous systems are trained to something much faster. The world moves much faster than the tempo of the body. So we practice, like literally practice like in a gym. That's why practice is a daily thing, that we're actually resetting the flywheel that gets going like this, especially because we're all so brilliant. We get going. And then we gradually retrain that flywheel down to where it's actually in our resonant state is an extension of a connection to the earth. So that's literal. Like in osteopathy, when I treat people with my hands, which is painful and inefficient now compared to what I've discovered is possible, there is actually a circuit of current we can feel going into the earth. There's chakras in the bottoms of the feet that open. And then ultimately, an osteopathic treatment is like a reboot on the biofield and the physical body, like the way a mechanic would reset an engine to a nice, purring idle. And when that happens, I noticed after 20 years of practice, maybe I started to get it after 10, I started to, or initially, we can all feel when our nervous system goes out. But can we feel the subtle body? Can we feel the energy body? Mostly the answer is no, because when we're up here and fast, we're going too fast. Things are too loud frequency-wise to be able to attune to that subtle frequency. And so in osteopathy, we kind of reset the structure, and then the nervous system comes into regulation. That's a typical endpoint of a session. Okay, you've been rebooted. What I noticed after about 10 years is that I started to actually feel the chakras. It really blew my mind. The first time I felt like doop, 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 all of them not only pop on simultaneously with the shift of the nervous system, but kind of attuned to one another in this beautiful symphony, like when you hear an engine and the valves are all tapping in this sort of concert-like way. And so that's the state of genius. That's the state where we're anchored in, all of our circuitry is lit up and integrated. I'm actually describing a physical and subtle version of what flow is. And then we can be out in the world and create and be able to, without even thinking, tune into where is my attention called to be? What is the highest service versus the logical version? I should do this with my online teaching or my patients, right? It's not logic. So to illustrate, 2 years ago, I did the craziest thing. I walked out of my very lucrative 20-year, backed up schedule, very reliable income, because my body finally said, I've had it with you. I like held out till I couldn't anymore. I think I was about to die, despite that it looked so good on paper. This is the paradox. And I thought, okay, we're doing this. I'm 60 this year. This is like a big retooling that almost nobody would ever think to do. My friends say, that's a crazy thing, but I'm so excited about it. And I'm so happy for me. It's not about me. It's like when we're in alignment and in flow, we can be in service in a meaningful way. Without my being able to do that, what's the point of even being here, honestly? And it's like you could be doing something so wonderful, but if it's not a match to your wiring, your soul starts to kind of go to sleep. So, yeah, if you're not growing, you're dying. And my figuring out how to be in the world in a way that gave back, because you can't give more than you receive. It's how I'm basically talking about energy accounting. I should call my school energy accounting training or something. Everything's about energy. So when you start to live through the lens of measure the energy, feel into the energy versus the other way of maybe it's more of a commerce kind of like the whole world, our whole culture is about commerce. You get this, I get this, you win, I lose, you lose, I win. Win-win is what works in nature. And so this idea, the big conceptual shift is really recognizing that we're all interconnected for real. It's not just a nice idea. And when you start to feel into that, you start realizing that. And I really love, Dr. Holly, that this is your philosophy so much. It's what I read when you invited me to this summit. I was like, oh, she really gets it. This is people here. We're all here to learn from and support one another and grow community. Of course, there's tons of science on that. And so, what direction would you like to go from this moment? Does anyone have a question?
No, typically if you want to share a little bit, like, I don't know, people have been kind of asking questions at the end if you kind of want to keep going and
Mhm.
then
I
we'll
love the Q&A format. I love being in a conversation versus being
totally.
solo. And let me just look at, I think I wrote down a few brilliant things here.
Yeah,
Let me
totally. I
maybe
mean, if
see if,
anybody has questions and she wants to take them, sometimes it takes somebody off their game, but
oh, well, so, okay, that actually brings up a great point to me. Take you off your game. So many things could take you off your game. The world is growing in intensity, and it's almost when I read it energetically, it's like this storm. It's constantly testing our resolve and our grounding and our states of regulation and our resilience. So rather than kind of orient to the challenges as the enemy, we can do a little mindset shift and say, oh, this is really here to challenge me to up my game and look at it as this is an exercise. Can I stay in? Can I feel my feet?
yeah.
We might all feel our feet right in this moment. And so, take home message, it's pretty hard to pull me off my game. Didn't used to be even a couple of years ago at all. So I call my little flow gym, which is mostly providers, but not all, cultivating resilience in stressful times. It's also a bit of energy medicine, intuition medicine. I'm at the place where if people don't get that and they think it's woo woo, I'm like, oh, I'm so worried for that person. Like this is actually how the world works, and I'm patient, not really always, and understand, that starting place. And I want to say, like in primitive times, our ability to resonate with and therefore be in the sea of wave motion, which is the way that information moves in the world and communication happens, we were able as primitive peoples to know what the weather was doing or how to track our game. This is what trackers still do. And
Yeah.
this is very basic stuff. We're not doing it for the most part. And we are now seeing the result externally. Everyone is really, 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 really struggling. The earth is in a little bit of a bind. So my inner impetus to, it's like, remember Dr. Seuss, Horton hears a who, and they're just, please, will you hear us, hear us, hear us? And finally, some little tiny voice came up on the top of the stack of all of the whole Whoville yelling to get the attention of the big crazy
Yeah.
going on out there. I feel like each one of us that resonates with that idea, there's an invitation to join to make the voice, well, I was going to say louder, but it's such a beautiful frequency. It's like, come back home to your body.
Okay.
And then I thought in this moment to relate it to your everyday life, everyday moments, as in this one, as in noticing what your chair feels like.
Yeah.
Noticing maybe a nuance. The specificity of sensing is really powerful, shifts energy really powerfully. So perhaps noticing the texture of whatever your toes are touching, and if the temperature is a little different from one side to another, or if one toe is calling your attention, the healing forces respond to this noticing. Energy follows attention. Tons of studies on that. So it's actually very awkward often if we haven't done it in a while. There's a lot of unfelt stuff. And I find that if we do it together, like right now, we're collectively journeying a little bit together. There's a buffer in the field that kind of smooths the experience. Like, say you get in there and say that this pattern or this blocked emotion or this memory that's been like hovering in there, trying to get out, and maybe we move a little faster to keep it quiet because we don't even know what to do with it or know if it's even there. When we become connected in a collective breath, meditation experience, we actually borrow wiring from one another. We can borrow capacity in other nervous systems. We call it limbic connection. In neuroscience, they call it mirroring. And there's not much written about mechanism. But when you follow the energy, you watch it. Oh, no, I couldn't feel any of this stuff. I actually failed the early cranial classes where they say, feel what we call the primary respiration, even in someone's arm. So the unique thing about osteopathy is that we look to a respiration that's deeper than the physical. And when the cranium and sacrum are synchronized in breathing together, we call that primary respiration. If it is manifest in the energy body too, the physical and subtle are integrated once again. So it's sort of strange to say osteopathy is where this happens and we figured it out. No, osteopathy is a science of biomimicry. How does nature manifest as health in a body? Oh, it manifests as physical and subtle body integration.
Mm.
So when we together here, we are here grounding ourselves by allowing our attention to come down. It always needs to come down. It also needs to express or wants to. Posteriorly, we often have kind of thin energetic fields behind because our attention is so visual versus a broader sensing. And so when the field begins to reveal itself, often there's a thinness behind and below. And circling back on this idea of why is it perhaps it's hard to slow down, it's hard to feel, it's painful when we go in because actually the body starts to wake up a little bit. Practicing collectively is how we buffer that experience, and it's actually how we make it a safe experience. There are times when the trauma is too big, the pattern's too big, and I just circle back to this idea that we're actually wired to heal in connection. So any other way is not to say always. Sometimes a one-on-one connection is just perfect, but you want to be able to feel what is really called for. And so all of the different groups, like even a 12-step. Why? Because people get into a room and they can support one another through their presence. And this creates up grounding and a sense of safety if the group is the right fit. There's a lot about finding your resonant match. So everything in life is about finding your resonant match. My one-on-one practice was not a resonant match. It's perfect for some people. That's exactly what lubricates and brightens their system. It's fabulous. So I sent all my patients to those people. And then, finding your right group where it's just a joy to be there every second. Actually, if it's a right group, it might also be terrifying because for moments, sometimes when you're really on the pulse of something, it's a big ask to stick with it. So, all circling back to osteopathy, when we treat people, we do this reboot, they move out into the world, and if they're not in their energy accounting mind, they slowly wind back down and their tissues get dense, and then their, physical stuff becomes more, their patterns become more symptomatic. Yeah.
Love this.
I say we move to questions. I mean, I'd love to move into.
Go ahead. I mean, does anybody have any questions that Dr. Veneziano, Dr. Michelle can answer for you? Is anybody coming up with anything that is like, as she's talking about the cranial and the sacrum and the balance and the vibration?
I wish we were broadcasting to 1,000 people.
I know.
And I see a few people looking for their mic, or it seems like they are.
Yeah, turn on your cameras, you guys, if you feel, comfortable, or if you're in a place where you can, because you're more active. But I know there's a couple of people that told me they can't turn their cameras on. But yeah, so why don't we go back into some of your questions? Like, what brought you to your wellness and healing? What brought you to here? Maybe talk a little bit about that so people can know.
I thought it was logic. And then when I started tuning into how the universe kind of guides everything, and there's a reason for everything, I then reassessed retrospectively and I saw it. I saw the touchstones on the, I was actually guided in this direction. And I thought it was for this reason. And interestingly, when you get into your body, you have an inner compass that gives you true, not true. It's kind of a BS meter. It also helps you understand if the patient's actually telling you the thing that is relevant or not. Like they come in with this huge problem list and you're like, I have to take care of 20 things. Oh, my body says there's a deeper thing. What's going on at home? Do you love your job? Slowly the problem list begins to fade. And then you're feeling like, oh, I'm actually in really meaningfully supporting this person, which creates a more fulfilling professional experience for us and human experience. But to answer your question, I do remember, well, my family was super intellectual, not very huggy, very much kind of I'm an Italian immigrant, West Coast, New York City, pretty hardcore survival experience for my more recent ancestors in the Depression era. And there was just this, I remember as a child, actually, I was like, there's this whole one movie. And I remember I did see colors, and I imagine most of us did see a lot when we were young until we forgot. And I hear children saying, I've heard them saying, and my own daughter, like, I'm forgetting. But we mostly don't notice the disappearing of our sight because it's so gradual. And we're so driven survival wise to belong and adapt and be doing it the right way. And so we've all nailed it. We're so good at leaving our bodies because that's what we were asked to do. So I look back and I remember thinking the world made no sense in the context of, I have one flash memory, I think I was 4, and seeing the difference between the one movie of my sight through my energetic lens and then what was happening. I thought, oh no, this is not going to go well. The grown-ups are in charge. They have no idea what they're doing. A few times I did see that. I think I was kind of born a seer, and sensitive. Then I super went to sleep. And maybe because I was so sensitive, I sort of locked it all away. That's very common. Like I find people who can't feel a darn thing, and sometimes I get the, oh, you actually feel everything, and you blocked it for good reason, to stay safe. A lot of us do this in our clinical training in, hospital settings or what have you. So what drew me to this, I remember walking across the courtyard in my high school and whatever, I was 14 and I was not happy, right? Here we are, adolescent time, we've pretty much acculturated. And I think this is a big part of why adolescents have such a hard time, besides all the hormones and everything. But they're actually losing their innocence and their wonder. They're kind of going what I call dense. If you want to speak in flow terms, they went dense. In dense, we don't feel our heart so much. We don't feel connected to something bigger like source. We lose track of the kind of, expanse of the natural world, and we feel very disconnected, alone. And that's what I think generates a lot of the fear, and kind of, people become so ambitious and think about money more than people, and it's like a whole spiral. And I don't get depressed about that either. I think that we're in one of those compression cycles, and energy accounting, it's cycles. So we peak and then we come back down. And in those peak experiences, we break things. We break patterns. We have a midlife crisis. We have a lot of people talk about their spiritual journeys as kind of coming through after something broke in them, even sometimes a really serious illness or a near death or something like that. It breaks us out of the movie. We somehow, our spirit uncouples from the story or the illusion of the world that our collective agrees to is reality. And so all of these things, toxins, EMFs, for me, it's mold, whatever. I look at those as, aha, now I'm in a wind up where I'm being challenged to deepen my connection, my sense of God within, my sense of healing within, in spite of. And those challenges aren't going away. Someone could look at natural health and go, oh my God, how are we going to stay ahead of the heavy metals and the glyphosate and the blah, blah, blah. Oh, and then you have the part where we're kind of being, there's a very adversarial attitude in terms of the regulatory agencies and the whole political landscape, where natural medicine is being made wrong, right? It doesn't earn anybody any money. So here we are in the money focus. And we could really find that you could collapse. You could completely collapse and not feel safe, right? We have a lot of colleagues who are feeling the effects of that, and their licenses being challenged and nutraceuticals being made unavailable and that sort of thing. The only way to make it through that is to stay connected to your heart. And that heart energy is almost like an invisibility cloak. It creates a coherent field. It also creates all your healing. It creates all your mental functions. It influences your tendency to go into incoherent thoughts, which can kind of crumble your external reality. Whatever's going on in here is going to be reflected outside. So you go, and tons of research on this. I was just watching a video of Roland McCready at the Science and Non-Duality Conference, showing all the science on how heart coherence creates, externally influences one another in the planet, and how this has been mapped out over since the 20s. This PhD astrophysicist mapped how large shifts in the energetics of our solar system correlate with big events on the planet. So we're in a big event. There's probably, the map didn't go well in this researcher's studies. And I would recommend everyone go watch Roland McCready at the Science and Non-Duality Conference, and he shows all that research. That we're in one of those is what I would say. And so you could say, oh, all is lost. Throw in the towel, stay in bed for a week because you just are flattened, right? I'm sure we've all been there. And then there's the mindset shift I mentioned earlier, which when I got here, it's like you could also see this as God, source, asking us to up our game a little bit in terms of bringing out our actual power and brilliance and genius. And if you are powerful and brilliant and genius, you will have more internal self-criticizing voices than anyone, because our conditioning is to make that thing wrong because we're not running that channel, right? Anybody thinking free and outside of the box is a threat to the status quo. We're all in that boat if we're listening to this and present in this space that you've created, Dr. Holly. So another mindset tweak is, if you have more inner negative self-talk or doubts about yourself, if you have a lot of power and huge gifts, you're going to have more self-doubt than anyone. So you could put a little self-doubt badge on there and know that it means you're a badass. This is all stuff that becomes so obvious when you attune your life to energy accounting. And you can do that when you actually come into range and integrate your physical and subtle bodies. And osteopathy is that, but nature is that, and you were born an expert. So this is not rocket science. This is what we're doing now. And I'm so happy to have been here. I'm kind of complete at this moment.
That's amazing. How many enjoyed this? Does anybody have questions for Dr. Veneziano? Her nice, calm, gentle, healing voice.
That's not random, by the way. I created that. It didn't used to have it. It's a coherence voice. So when you have coherence, you actually transmit it through your voice. I was doing it this whole time, and you're healing people just walking down the street or doing a podcast like this one.
I love that. What made you think about creating a coherence voice for yourself?
I noticed it happening, and then I noticed people behaving differently around them. So around me. So I take medical students, and one of my other names for this, my flow school is resident survival guide. And they actually tell me they're doing better on exams. They're not nervous during boards. They're able to walk into a room in the hospital or whatever, read the energy, their attention goes out and imparts coherence. If they're coherent, this is why spiritual teachers can kind of have like people say they get in a room with the Dalai Lama and they feel something. This is the something. This is very native to how we function. It's not just for people like the Dalai Lama. And so it's like ninja school, and you walk into a room and you can begin to notice all the pieces, not go into story. The strongest signal in the room wins. They're anchored, they're connected to their heart, everyone entrains to them, and then boom, people stop arguing, and they start having fun and having a flow experience in work. So my school for the medical students is actually for the less healing oriented ones. Lots of them are going into all kinds of specialties, and they're not likely to put their hands on anyone, I have ENT bound or internal medicine bound or surgery bound or ER bound. Some of them do use their hands, and these principles, I'm calling them osteopathically inspired principles because I bring in a particularly musculoskeletal aspect. And I do that because there are a lot of things happening now that didn't exist when yoga and qigong were created. There are structural issues that kind of keep us disconnected from our energy bodies. So we go into lots of physiology and practice around those things. And so they learn how to be osteopaths in every moment, in a conversation, in an argument with a family member, in a managing of their clinical team, in a exchange with a patient. And every moment of it is deepening their wiring for remaining in a regulated state. So you said, how did I do it? I practiced. And we're all born experts, so it's like riding a bicycle. It's actually already in there. We're awakening native wiring, and I would say across the board, it's just a gorgeous experience for our bodies. So I did kind of summarize some of the larger points of both musculoskeletal, and I have, Dr. Holly, you put a link to my free ebook, which is on my website, flowismedicine.com. And I don't even remember, did I put the heart thing in there? I think I did. It's pretty primary. I know I put the way we sit at our desk can really influence this subtle body, physical body integration. And the way our tongues connect with our palates is key, whether or not we're breathing through our noses or our mouths. There's a whole really deep education on that. And I have articles, free articles on everything on my website. I have a self-study library under at flowismedicine.com. And that's where it says courses. It's not really a class. It's kind of a sangha or a communal group experience. It's a play space. Play is very critical for brightening the heart and deepening learning and healing. And there's tons of research on that too. So it's really important. It's really beautiful. It's not like it's important or good. It's like your body loves beauty, play. One of the pieces I put in that ebook is about pleasure, which is it's like, oh, the savoring that beautiful fluid experience when your heart, you're connected to your heart. You're happy. I could say happy.
Joyful.
Joyful. Yeah.
I love joy better than happy, I think, because I just see joy for me, like, it just, the vibration is so much stronger than happy. You know what I mean? So I just love the word joy. And I just think it's so more empowering, I think, than people who are happy. Are you happy? Are you good? Are you, I'm full of happiness and one of the things that I love that you're talking about is just like really connecting to your inner voice and your inner well-being. And then I loved that you, as we wait for the next speaker, like I love that you mentioned play, like being in playful and creative energy is like so important, for healing. And oh, can you unmute me? Chrissy me. Sorry about that. Play is so like important. And, when you're in flow, because we've got the feminine, the masculine energy, when you're in flow and you're in that creative space, like that's when like beauty really begins to happen. Whereas so many individuals are trying to kind of push through life and not really be in their inner being, which is what I spoke about today on my daily live, like really connect to the heart and really like be in your beingness. And then, she mentioned that she realized like the one-to-one clinical practice wasn't like warming your heart anymore, and I think so many people stay in environments that aren't nurturing and that aren't warming. And then we end up with disease. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but I mean, people stay stuck for way too long.
Oh, I thought I was out of time. I can talk forever. Be careful what you
Well,
invite.
I'm waiting for my next speaker.
Oh,
So I
great.
don't
Yeah.
know. Two of you didn't show
Let
up on
me.
time. So we'll just keep going.
Oh, great.
You go.
So
Yeah.
the thing you're illustrating that I think is epic as a take home from today is that joy is whatever you want to call it. There's a way the body goes, like it brightens and it goes in the direction of something. And we'll often shut it down if it's not practical on our, logical kind of like, oh, that's not going to help me pay my mortgage. And um, that's like an inner muscle test. Your body, it's like your spirit saying, go here. And it's a voice that gets quiet if we shut it down over time. So, one of the things I started out doing, I don't know, 6 years ago is when I kind of got a clue. I kind of shifted full on to energy management, not just in bodies, but in my life. And as I started saying yes to the little things that weren't too intimidating, like this thing, I'm really, I want to do this. I want, in a sense of what's my deepest desire. And then I'd maybe listen to the conversation in my head that would no doubt make it wrong initially. Oh, I really want that thing. It could be a certain kind of latte, or it could be like, I would love that glass of water. I don't want to get up. Someone's sitting near it. I could ask them for it, but I don't have the courage to do that or feel, the fill in the blank on the number of things we make wrong about asking for support of another. It's just remarkable. So it's a thing to practice. Like I could get up, but I also could lean into the discomfort and assume that we love to help one another. We're all helpers. We all love that. Don't we love that? And then when we're like, oh no, I don't want to ask. Well, wait a minute. You don't want to ask, but we love helping. So does that really add up? So there's another little mindset tweak. Well, we're practicing letting our desire out listening to the conversation that will no doubt make it wrong in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And then leaning into the discomfort of asking for it.
Yeah.
And that's like possibly the final frontier, just like making the inner voice right and listening to her. The
Yeah.
feminine, men have it as well. It's not just about the female sex. Listening to that guidance coming through, the spirit being the feminine and the physical being the masculine. In a sense, actually, the fluid versus the dense. I think of the earth as the feminine, as the structure in the sense of the ground, not so much in the sense of structure. And practicing it, it's the single most challenging thing. I'm still working with that one. So if you find it challenging, and then you notice a gazillion negative self-talk conversations coming through on that one, or in your research, you're asking research, you're not alone. You're not alone. Yeah.
That's amazing. I just love, I love the work that you're doing and that realizing that healing in a community for you is just, like you were saying, online and in the space rather one-to-one. I think that's so important. And then when we as practitioners know like the best healing journey to help support our patients, clients, whatever we're referring them to as, is just like so important. And I just love that, I love that you like pivoted and now you're walking down that coherent voice. Now you're healing people and you're in this group energy. And, I just want to say thank you for, doing the work that you're doing in this world. And I just honestly, with love, I'm glad we came across one another. And, I appreciate you. And there's more of us that get to show up and do the work that we love to do, because I love doing what I'm doing. I just
I
love it.
can tell. I can tell. I can tell.
Yeah.
Do I have a minute to say one more thing?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, go ahead and say one more thing.
Hey, let me see if I can retrieve it, because I have a very tangible example. I love speaking in specifics and bringing it down into right now, this moment. When people go into lofty hello, back down here into like specific examples and moments where something happened and something shifted inside you or your mind, which is that I made this shift to teaching, making CMEs, whatever, when COVID happened. And that's what I had been years thinking of doing so. But what am I going to do? Cancel my patients for 6 weeks or whatever? I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. COVID happened, a silver lining, sat down, built the curriculum, thought it was going to go one way. Well, okay, so I learned about applying for CME and all and then my body said, can we just meet after about a year now? Can we just literally get online and do energy medicine in real time? And I don't care if that's part of the CME or not. And my body guided me to do that. And it was the first time. I didn't think it was going to be part of the, what would make the school financially viable. And it turned out to be the thing that magnetized. I just did it for me, from my heart. And it's been what's created there isn't anything else like this that offers CME that actually is a healing experience on a weekly basis. And it's like a touch in, because, if I miss 2 weeks myself, I don't have the same kind of like sturdiness in my system. I need to go in and touch back in, or I get to, and kind of it's my best healing. And since I've started doing it, I don't actually seek out physical treatment or almost anything. But the thing I want to say is that that school isn't going to replace my practice. No way, right? Not no way. And so, however, I stuck with it anyway, sometimes very scary. And after about a year into that and spending everything I had, to be transparent, like everything, my savings and everything, I got offered a consulting job because someone felt my energy and said, we need that to make this huge educational health platform project actually fly. And I would say source did that. The universe does does all the things. I guess to the extent that I've been willing to do my best to trust it. I don't always trust it, but I guess that thing is the universe really does give us what we need. I wonder if there's anyone here that like disagrees with that. If anyone here disagrees with, oh, my gut said do or don't do that thing and I didn't listen and blah, almost anybody. They don't have to believe in energy to go, I knew it was a bad idea and I did it anyway. Like they knew, speaking to that inner knowing. And then that last little mindset tweak, which kind of encompasses all of it, is in your musings, in your psyche, in your dreaming, do you imagine the universe or life as happening to you or happening for you? Some layer of healing, wisdom, guidance coming through every moment, or couching it in a, oh, it's terrible that this happened.
Yeah, I love that. So great. You got to share your last thought, and people can pull. Christy put the freebie in the chat for you, and so people can, click on that. And thank you so much for showing up and connecting. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and I'm so glad we're connected moving forward.
Totally, totally. I appreciate it. So have an amazing rest of your day.
For information on our trainings, which are open to everyone and offer continuing education credits to providers of all kinds, message us here or visit our courses page on the web at flowismedicine.com. And be sure to follow us on social media.